Now the clock strikes noon. Welcome everyone and thank you for being here with us. Happy Thursday. My name is Jenny Walker and I'll be your host for today's webinar. You're here with the USC Marshall School of Business Executive Education team. This course is The Power of Mindfulness, Resiliency, and Realignment. We'll be getting started right now. We do have a chat box below and we encourage everyone to engage in. You could please introduce yourself if you haven't already done so using the chat function and share where you're logging in from and what industry you're from. That'd be great. Just a little bit about today's webinar. This will be an active webinar where you'll participate in engagement polls and chat box to interact with one another. We invite you to actively participate in this webinar in multiple modalities: listening, the chat box below, or video using your webcams with your microphone on. But feel free to mute yourself if you'd like. The recording of this webinar, copies of the slides presented, along with the resource sheet will be emailed by the end of this week. On today's webinar are my fabulous executive education colleagues. They'll respond to your chat questions throughout our webinar. It's my pleasure to introduce our presenter today, Alan Weiss, a professor of marketing at USC's Marshall School of Business. Alan, I now turn it over to you.
All right, great. Well, thank you, everybody. Just a little bit about me so you understand where we're going. I'm the director of Mindful USC, and also I'm on the board of the Center for Mindfulness Science, and I'm a professor in the Marshall School of Business. But my background in mindfulness goes back 15 years as a senior teacher at Insight LA, which is probably the largest mindfulness center here in Los Angeles in Santa Monica. And so what I'd like to do is kind of walk you through what mindfulness is, how it helps you, and all of these other sorts of things. And then you're going to get a chance to try out some stuff. And so I'd like to start off by saying that we tend to care for everything in our lives. We tend to care about significant others and our family. We tend to care a lot about our work, our friends, and our community. And then we also care a great deal, especially now, about our bodies, etc. But we don't do a lot of work caring so much about our mind, our heart, and our soul. And as a result of this, you know, what happens is many people live their lives kind of trying to be happy on the outside as much as they can, but have a lot of other things going on inside. And of course, in the middle of this pandemic that we're going through, more people are actually on the outside getting really stressed and anxiety and all of these other sorts of things. But I'm here to see if I can help you with that. So I'm going to just talk just a little bit about the benefits of mindfulness, which is beyond just dealing with difficult emotions and difficult thinking, which is really important. But what it does is it makes you more resilient because you're able to bounce back from difficult emotions. It also helps with being more focused and ability to concentrate, being more relaxed with new situations and more authentic to yourself and others. So you'll see as we go through this that there's actually a lot of different benefits that comes from mindfulness, and a lot of this has all been shown in scientific papers. There's almost 700 papers that have just been published this year on the benefits of mindfulness through medical journals. And so just what you're going to learn today is just a quick overview of the skills that are taught in a 5 or 6 week class of mindfulness. So you might think of this as a quick overview of a class on learning to play a piano or a guitar. So it's just really an overview. And I just want to kind of show you some of the techniques, et cetera, that we do when we do a class, and you learn it systematically. And to do this, I just want to start with a quick check-in. And this is something I do when I teach in companies. That's one of the first things I teach people. And so what I'd like you to do is just do something simple. We're just going to close our eyes, just try this. I'm going to be doing the same thing. And we're just going to check in. And so when you think about just checking in, you might just think in terms of just closing your eyes and then just check in with your posture right now. Like what's going on with your facial expression? And do you notice any tension in your body right now? Many times we have tension around our eyes or our face, our cheekbones, or maybe in our jaw, or maybe you have tension in your neck, or maybe in your shoulders. And we're just checking in here, just noticing what's going on. You don't have to do anything about it, but just notice it. And then check in with your mind and see, is your mind clear or is it foggy right now? Maybe it's agitated, or maybe it's excited, or maybe it's sleepy or dull. What's just going on with your mind right now? And then turn your attentions to your emotions. Do you feel contented right now? Do you feel discontented? Or maybe you feel very neutral. See if you can just notice what's going on inside of you right now through your physicality, mentally and emotionally. And then just take a couple of deep breaths and then just gently open your eyes. And so this was just simply just a simple way to turn, instead of out in the world where we spend all our time out in the world and seeing all the things that are going on, to turn inward a bit. And so this like leads a little bit into kind of like, well, what is mindfulness? Well, mindfulness actually has two components to it. And so the first component is really being present to your experience right now. Some people call this just being mindful, paying attention to what's happening right now. And the second part of it, which is actually more important in a lot of ways, which is just being relaxed with your mind. That is, just noticing without evaluative judgments like this is good, this is bad, I need to do this, and all the stuff that we normally do, just not reacting to it, and just being receptive to what's happening in the present moment. Now you might ask, okay, so like what's the benefits of doing this? Like, I don't do this sort of stuff. Like, why would you do something like this? Because that raises the question, like, why should you relax your mind? In fact, what we do is we relax our bodies every night. I mean, that's all we talk about is, did you have a good night's sleep? And you might think about, well, what are the benefits of sleeping? When you wake up and you've slept really well, then you have more energy, you're able to do more things and do things like that. The same thing happens when you relax your mind, but we don't ever relax our mind. Instead, what we do is we're using it all the time. And when you relax your mind, first thing that happens is it opens up your perspective. Relaxed mind, you learn, actually opens up your perspective to a universe of possibilities. So you start seeing many more things and different ways of acting and different ways of doing things, etc. And you can try this sometime, just having a really relaxed mind. Transcendental meditation is actually is different. I actually used to be in transcendental meditation. Transcendental meditation is more of a concentration practice, and because you're using a mantra, and because of it's a mantra, it's a concentration exercise. Mindfulness is very different than that because we allow our attention to be with whatever's going on right now. And you'll see as we go through this that it has a different flavor to it. You might ask, well, why are you paying attention to the present moment? Like, like what's the benefit of noticing what's going on right now? And one of the things that you learn when you start paying attention to the present moment is that you start seeing that between stimulus and response, there's a space. Stimulus being like a thought that pops in your mind, and before you just react to it, there's a space there. And as Viktor Frankl says, in that space is our power to choose our response. And it's actually in our how we respond lies our growth and our freedom. And so a stimulus might be an emotion that arises, right? You're just sitting there and you don't ask to be anxious. I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever said, I really want to be anxious right now. Anxiety just arises. And it's how you respond or react to that anxiety is really the difference. And so when you pay attention to the present moment, you actually have freedom. You actually gain It's kind of like if you don't notice what's happening because your body's tight, then you have no freedom. You just stay with a tight body. But once you notice it, you're able to relax it. So why do we meditate? Well, what we're doing when we're meditating is we're learning how to relax the mind and just watch. That's what meditation is. So a lot of people think meditation's weird because people close their eyes. But of course, they never think that. If they see somebody sleeping, they think, oh, they're sleeping. That's really good. But with mindfulness, what we're doing is we're closing our eyes and we're just practicing how to relax the mind and then just watch to see what happens. And so in meditation, you're going to see a lot of judgments. And so you're going to see judgments like, oh, this is cool, or I'm really bad at this, or I can't do this, or this is lame, and it's a waste of time, or I'm a loser, etc. And the first thing you start realizing is that a lot of these evaluative judgments that we have are actually masquerading from the truth. Okay, so when you say this is a waste of time, what you're really saying is, I'm having a transient state of restlessness. That's what's really going on. If you say, oh, I'm really lazy, what you're really saying is this is a low energy state that I'm in right now. And so with mindfulness, what we do is we practice observing what's really going on, what's really happening, and see if we can just drop the judgments. And so, as I say, we let things be as they are. And you'll see as we kind of go through this that it's really in doing this, which is what allows difficult emotions to pass and difficult thinking to pass. And I'll have more to say about this as we go through this. So I thought, well, maybe we can try just like doing a kind of like just a short, uh, uh, example of like what is a mindfulness meditation. And so, and maybe this will help to clear up some of the questions that come in. And so to do this, all I'd like you to do is just close your eyes and just listen to my guidance. My guidance will tell you exactly what to do. Just close your eyes and see if you can just take a couple of deep breaths. Breathing in and breathing out a little bit longer, by the way, is something that was an article in the Wall Street Journal just a couple of days ago. Talked about how we're not really breathing long enough these days. And then as you're breathing in and breathing out, see if you can just relax your body as much as possible. And then see if you can just bring your attention to the breath. Just noticing the breath as you breathe in and breathe out. Now your attention will wander away, but don't worry about that. As it wanders away, just notice it and escort your attention back to the breath. Your attention might wander into a deep hole, and you might even forget that you're meditating, but that's not a problem. Once you just notice that your attention has wandered away, just simply notice that, and then escort your attention back to the physical sensations of breathing in and breathing out. Now you're going to notice a lot of judgments, but every time you notice a judgment, you can just say, oh, look, that's a judgment I have. Okay, and just take a couple of breaths. And then at the bell, just gently open your eyes. Okay, so a lot of things probably happened for you during that, and a lot of different things happen. But what I'd like to do is I'm going to just run a quick poll here and say, what did you experience during that meditation? Just what did you experience? Did you experience a sense of calm or lots of thinking or anxiety or what? Okay, so a lot of people experience calm, and that's good. And if you have thinking, everything that's on here is very normal that people experience, just so you know. So some people experience a lot of thinking when they're meditating. Some people experience falling asleep. That's a very common thing. And then there's restlessness and frustration. All of these things come up during meditation, and they're just like things that come up in life, etc. But during mindfulness, what ends up happening is that when thinking arises, what we do is we just say, oh, this is thinking, this is thinking. And so you can actually almost like label it and just say, oh, this is anxiety, or wow, there's tightness in my body here. And so you're just like noticing, what's happening, okay? If there's restlessness, we just go, oh, look, this is restlessness. And so what we're doing is we're just literally learning to just pay attention to whatever is arising. So I just wanted to just share the results with you so that you can kind of see like what's happening during this. So as I said during this, you probably noticed a lot of things that are going on, that meditation isn't easy at first. And it's not easy at first, but it gets easier over time. The first time you do it, I know when I started, my mind was like racing around, et cetera. I didn't think I could stay on the breath for like maybe a second or two. But the more I practiced it, the more I started becoming able to just notice what was going on, et cetera. So this is like an example of like what our lives look like, right? So we have thoughts and we have emotions and we have body sensations. And all of these things are coupled together. And so when you have a thought that says something like, why did she say that? Or I'm a horrible person, or this is the story of my life. What's happening is that you're actually having a body sensations like tightness or heat. And you might also have emotions that are going on. And so one of the things that we do is we pay attention to our body. And the reason why is because, as you see here, our emotions are actually body sensations. So our body is actually where our emotions are experienced. And you can see this like when you have anger, for example, or let's say that you just have anxiety. People express anxiety during that meditation. Anxiety shows up in these kind of this red area. And then, but love also experiences as a physical sensation, and depression does as well. And so we actually understand this, and in mindfulness, we actually use this as a way to process our difficult emotions. And our bodies are actually quite wise. And so this is the reason why we spend time in a mindfulness. You can see here, like when we eat and we ingest, process, and eliminate what we don't need, when we experience the world, wouldn't it be great to do the same? But probably, as you know, we get a lot of indigestion and constipation. It's all going on in our minds. And so we don't spend a lot of time, at least in mindfulness, what we do is we spend a lot of time kind of like just noticing what's going on in our bodies, because our bodies are able to process this information and the stuff that's going on in our heads and our emotions a lot easier by just doing it that way. So we actually have lots of ways to connect with your body, and you can actually do this. In mindfulness, in a class, we showed people how to actually do it in a much deeper way, but you can do, like, you can walk mindfully, you can actually eat mindfully, you can actually wash the dishes mindfully, and you can actually do listening. You can actually listen in a very mindful sort of a way. And the reason why we do this is because of the way that we deal with emotions. And so I want to talk a little bit about emotions, and then we're going to talk a little bit about thinking and how this all kind of works. Okay, so feelings, the emotions that we experience as human beings, they can be difficult, and they may be deeply uncomfortable, but they're not right or wrong. They're simply part of our present moment experience. That's all that feelings are, is just what's happening right now. And if you just leave these emotions alone, if you just leave them alone, okay, and you don't interact with them, they actually don't last very long. And if you want to know, because everybody wants to know how long do these emotions last, if I just watch them and I don't interact with them, even the most difficult ones, okay? If you get angry, or if you get sad, or you start feeling a lot of anxiety, etc., how long do they really last? And you can understand this through Jill Bolte Taylor's work on her book, My Stroke of Insight. As she says here, once triggered, anger, she's talking about anger, but you can put in any emotion that you like here. The chemical release by my brain surges through my body, and I have a physiological experience. And then within 90 seconds from the initial trigger, the chemical component of my anger has completely dissipated from my blood, and my automatic response is over. However, if I remain angry after those 90 seconds have passed, then it is because I have chosen to let that circuit continue to run. And so moment by moment, I make the choice to either hook into my neurocircuitry or move back into the present moment, allowing that reaction to melt away as a fleeting physiology. I've actually experienced this because I've been doing this for so long, being in a very difficult emotion and being able to, by processing it mindfully, be able to get rid of that difficult emotion within about a minute or two. Even the most difficult, deep disappointment, for example, or anger or anxiety or something like that, it can be gone within like 2 minutes, okay? So mindfulness is what allows you to do things like this. And in fact, I teach at Children's Hospital to doctors who actually use this practice, because as one said to me, she says, I go to these different rooms where the children are, it's a very sad experience because I'm dealing with parents and children who are in very difficult situations. And she said, I go back to my office and I do this practice that I've shown them. And with that, they're able to like practice and do it in a kind of like a, kind of in a way so that she says that she doesn't bring it to the next one. What's being image, heat, or what else? That's a good, Gazelle asked this question. It's an interesting question. I've done some work with this company called Biopac up in Santa Barbara, where they put probes all over people, and then that's how they kind of like measure electrochemical reactions that people are going on. But that's that's the way that they do this. Okay, so how do we typically deal with our emotions? I mean, how do we all just typically deal with our emotions? Well, the most ways that people deal with it is they go on social media, or they go running, or they do drugs, or they go shopping, or they get stressed and they eat, or they drink, etc. And a lot of people just don't want to talk about it. They want to push it away, or they want to do other sorts of things as a way to deal with their emotions. And we do it in a different way. We actually do this in a different way. So I want to give you kind of a sense. I want to just give you a little bit of a sense of taste of like what is don't like how we deal with these things. And so what I'd like you to do, we'll do this through a meditation. And what I'd like you to do is to kind of like, and I'm going to have to like help you to come up with a difficult emotion. So don't come up with the most world-class emotion, because to do this, sometimes it's a lot easier to start with a simpler emotion and then build up to it, okay? All right, so what I'd like you to do is just simply close your eyes and then bring your attention to the breath as we were doing before. And this is going to give you a sense, it's kind of like how mindfulness really works. So just imagine like you're a small boat on the ocean. And what's happening is that your small boat is tethered into the ground on an anchor. And the anchor is the breath. And that's what you're doing with the breath. And just remember, meditation is not a breath exercise. It's an attention exercise. So we're using the breath just to pay attention to what's happening as we breathe in and breathe out. Now along come these waves. All these different little waves come along, and these are the waves of thinking and body sensations and emotions. And if we just notice these little waves, we just notice them, everything that arises will pass away, everything. And you'll just stay anchored to this breath. Just your attention on the present moment. To help them move along, we often just label them. And so that if thinking arises, we'll say, okay, this is thinking. This is thinking. And if an emotion arises, we just go, oh, this is sadness. This is sadness. This is anxiety. Anxiety. But every once in a while, a really big wave comes along and makes it difficult to stay on the breath. When that happens, what we do is we drop our attention on the breath and instead pay attention directly to the emotion. And so what I'd like you to do is to just bring to your awareness something that is difficult for you in your life right now. It might be thoughts of an event in the past that was painful or distressing. Maybe something in your life right now that is causing you painful feelings. Or maybe it's something you're worried about in the future. Just allow yourself to bring your attention to focus on one of these worrying experiences or thoughts that you have right now. See what kind of feelings arise. Maybe there's a gang of feelings there. See if you can just name the different emotions that arise. For example, maybe you're just sitting there and saying, oh, this is anger and frustration and disappointment. And we're just naming any and all of the emotions that are there. Now see if there's just one emotion that is the most predominant emotion, if you have a gang of emotions. What's the most predominant emotion you're experienced? See if you can just name that. Just name the emotion. And then what I'd like you to do is to place your attention in your body, to see where in your body you experience that emotion as a physical sensation. Where's the tension? Where's the tightness? Where's the constriction? Where in your body do you experience this emotion as a physical sensation? You might have to look through your entire body to see like where it is. Maybe it's in your shoulders, or maybe it's in your neck. It can even be around your eyes or your forehead, or maybe it's in your arms or your hands or your upper torso. See if you can just find where that emotion is expressed as a physical sensation. And then see if you can just start to relax the body around that emotion. You can do this with each out breath. The out breath is the more soothing breath, relaxing the tension in your shoulders if that's where you find it. Relaxing the pressure in your chest if that's where you find it. You might even say something to yourself like, this is really hard. This is really difficult. But give yourself the permission to just be with that emotion. And then finally, see if you can just accept the emotion just as it is. You might even say to yourself, it's just like this. This fear is just like this. It's just like these body sensations. It's just like this. Okay, so then just bring your attention back to the breath. And take a couple of deep breaths. And then just gently open your eyes. Okay. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to do another poll here for you, because I like to see like when you, because for a lot of people, that when the first time they ever do this, they're really surprised to see like where this emotion is being expressed in your body. Like where was the emotion for you expressed in your body? Where was it? So maybe it's in the upper chest, or maybe it's in the belly, right? And for some of you, it's like in the shoulders or the neck. I get a lot of people who have it like in their jaw and then their face. Okay. And then a few of you have it in their back. Okay. And then you can even have it in your hips. Right. And so what you're seeing here, and this is like part of it. So Gazelle said, you know, somebody said they feel it in their gut, or they might feel it in their throat. And these are all, as I said, these are, in fact, I'm just going to end this and just share this so you can kind of see like what other people experience. This is like how we kind of experience these emotions. You know, this is how we experience these emotions in our body. And so what I was doing for you there was a practice that is really about, you know, taking the emotion, noticing it in the body, and basically what I was showing you was what I have here. We recognize the emotion, we label it if it's obvious. Sometimes, as I say, it's a gang of emotions. And so at first, emotions are like oil and vinegar, and so they're all kind of this mush of emotions. But as you become more practiced and understand mindfulness better, et cetera, what ends up happening is these emotions start to separate, and you can kind of see, okay, so this is the main emotion that I'm having. And then we look at it in our body to see, where do I experience this emotion? And then we soften the experience in our body. And then finally, we don't really identify with it. As it turns out, you're not anxious and you're not angry. You're not any of these emotions. What's happening is this is an experience that you're having. It's an experience of anger. It's the experience of anxiety. It's the experience of sadness. This is a really important distinction to make, because a lot of people, what they do is when they say, I am anxious, what they're doing is concretizing that anxiousness. They're basically saying it's about me, when it actually has nothing to do with you. And if you're not sure about this, remember, just ask yourself the question, have you ever said, I want to be anxious? That is something that I personally, using my prefrontal cortex, have decided that's what I want to have happen. It doesn't work that way. Anxiousness just arises. And with mindfulness, we just notice that these are just experiences that we're having as we're kind of like, kind of going through our lives. And so one of the things that, one of the reasons why we do things this way is, and I'll show you this because I think this kind of helps to understand it much better, which is that, instead of asking, why do I have this emotion? Who's responsible for this emotion? How do I make it go away? How long will it last? What we do is we find serenity first and then ask questions later. And what kind of questions might you ask? Well, grant me the serenity. This is the Serenity Prayer. Notice that the first step of the Serenity Prayer is to have serenity, a calm mind, to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things I can, and then the wisdom to know the difference. When we're upset and we're in the middle of an emotion, what happens is your world becomes very narrow. It becomes very narrow, and you can't see any of this. But with a relaxed mind, you can start seeing, okay, this is something I can change. This is something I can't change. What I've seen over the years is that people get really frustrated. I mean, a lot of their stress comes from trying to change things that they really can't change. Okay, so before I go on, let's just see if there's any questions just about, about this. Let's see, somebody asked, would you please elaborate with increasing emotional intelligence? Exactly, Gazelle, that's exact. I mean, think about it this way. If you don't know anything and you're not willing to be with your anxiety, once you're able to be with anxiety, you can start recognizing the anxiety in other people. And this is how you end up having a more emotional intelligence. Part of the problem that people have is that they never experience fear. They've never been with fear. They don't want to be with fear. Fear is like the last thing they want to be with. But once you understand, okay, this is fear, it's easier to see the fear in other people, okay? And this also helps with interpersonal communication and all of these other sorts of things. And so this is the stuff that you just learn kind of in a mindfulness class, because you start learning a lot more about like how all these things start fitting together, okay? Is there a risk of losing a sense when it's time to thought? That's an interesting question. Is there a risk of losing a sense of when it's time to take a thought seriously? No, what ends up happening is that, a lot of what I'm talking about here is when I'm dealing with difficult thinking, et cetera. What ends up happening is it's the difficult thinking that actually gets in the way of what's happening with us as human beings. It's not the purposeful thinking, right? I mean, I'm an academic. I mean, I can practice mindfulness and I can write research papers because what ends up happening is that mindfulness helps you also with discernment. And discernment is like to see, oh, okay, this is a thought that I need to pay attention to, and this is just a story that's going on. It's just the same old story about whatever over and over again. And so you start learning how all of this stuff works together. All right, so in the interest of time, I just want to kind of like spend a little time on our thinking, since somebody just brought that up. And when you think about mindfulness of thinking, I'd just like to say a couple of things. One is that we regard our thoughts as very important. We believe they define who we are. We think they have authority and are true, even though they're often filled with biases and illusions. It's actually interesting. There's been so much research on the biases that we all as human beings have, like a groupthink or a fundamental attribution error. It just goes on. And yet we just believe everything that comes into our minds. And we get hooked into the content of our thoughts, the stories they tell, the meaning they weave out of our experiences. And so with mindfulness, what we do is we just notice that most thoughts arise and pass away. And what we do is we tend to turn our attention towards just the process of thinking. And so what I'd like to do is I'm gonna just do a short little thinking thing for you. I just wanna see kind of like, we can focus on mind, is it temporary and how do we solve the problem? Let me just answer this question. What is difficult thinking? As Don says, difficult thinking, you know what difficult thinking is. I think most people do. It's like when you're sitting there working on something and then all of a sudden you get like the same story going over and over and over again. It's really like, it's like what we call kind of like discursive thinking. And it's kind of like when you get angry and you just kind of say the story over and over again. And I can see how we can focus on mindfulness, but is that a temporary and how do we solve the problem? And so again, this is just kind of like, when you practice, it's, like obsessive thinking or rumination. Thank you. As I say, when we practice, what ends up happening is that, your mindfulness can come up, like, you go through your day. Mindfulness doesn't have to be done 24/7. What ends up happening is that you just go through your day, and when stress arises, you engage your mindfulness. I always say it's like going to Dodger Stadium and watching somebody do batting practice. Why are they doing batting practice? I mean, what are they doing when they do batting practice? They're not learning to bat so they can go out in the world and just hit everybody with a bat. What they're doing is so that when the World Series and somebody's throwing a 100-mile-an-hour fastball at them, they go, I know exactly what to do in this moment. Mindfulness is exactly the same thing. You just go, this is a moment where I need to bring my skill, because mindfulness is a skill, and then you can bring it to bear on that situation. All right. So what I'd like to do is, this is going to be a short practice. It's a short thing, but I'd like you to just kind of close your eyes, and we're just going to I'm going to look at your thinking for a second, okay? All right, so just close your eyes and just see if you can just bring your attention to the breath. And it's just like the practice that I was doing before, when we're just like bringing our attention to the breath. And small little waves come along. And every once in a while, thinking comes along. And when thinking comes along for you, just allow yourself to think if you'd like, or think about the problems of the day and the things that we did in the last meditation. See what it's like just to name it, just to say, this is thinking, this is thinking. Just do it twice and do it in a kind voice. This is thinking, this is thinking. Maybe if you're doing a lot of planning, you can say, this is planning, this is planning. Maybe if you're doing a lot of remembering, you can say, remembering, remembering. Now I'd like you just to take a look at your thinking for just a moment. Do you think in terms of words? Or maybe it's a voice. If it's a voice, whose voice is it? Maybe you think in terms of images. What is thinking for you when you start thinking? Is it an image? Is it a voice? Is it words? Like words you hear? Words on a typewriter? What exactly is thinking for you? And do you notice any qualities of the thinking beyond the content itself? Like, is the thinking fast or is it slow? Is there a lot of energy in the thinking or is it calm? If you think in terms of images, is the image close to you or far away? Is it in black and white or maybe it's in color? What do you notice about the thinking beyond the content of the thinking itself? Okay, then just bring your attention back to the breath. It's just you breathe in and breathe out. And then the sound of the bell, just gently open your eyes. Okay, so I want to answer a question that was private, but before I do that, I just want to, because it's a general question, just like what's thinking for you? I mean, what is it? Words? Is it voice, or what exactly? So thinking, as Alba said, always involves lists. Okay, so there's a lot of lists going on, right? So it's kind of like, okay, so it's just lists. Lists, by the way, and we're usually doing lists because we're planning. So it's kind of like planning, and so we just notice this as planning. Did anybody notice that they think in terms of images? A lot of people, surprisingly, realize for the first time in the class that I teach, my thinking is actually just images that are going on. Images, black and white, right? And emotional attachment. Okay, Pauline, thanks for that. And this is like what you're actually pointing to, which is something that, again, we don't have time to talk about here, but which is that a lot of our, especially some of our thinking, it turns out to be, part of it turns out to have an emotional component to it. Let me see here. Okay, so anything else in terms of like, anything that you saw in terms of like just your kind of like the thinking that's going on? Word fragments, not necessarily scenarios. So we search for these as kind of scenarios. Okay. Mainly verbal or my voice. Analysis, it depends on negative, a voice conversation. Okay. So all of these, and everybody who's communicating here, this is really like important, which is that all of these are just the ways that we all kind of think. It's not just you; millions and millions of other people do it exactly the same way. And so one of the things that we do is, again, when we teach class on this, one of the things that we do is we show people how to like deal with these difficult thinking and see if there's like an emotion underlying it, and then how to process that emotion. Okay, but we don't have time for that here. Somebody brought up an interesting question, which I'd like to just address here about, that one of the things that happens is that, okay, so maybe what ends up happening is that, you have very great disappointment, and then you process the disappointment, but now you're back in the world and there's the disappointment again. One of the things that mindfulness does, this is the kind of the interesting part of what I'm saying, is that when you have a calm mind, when you're able to calm your mind down, even with some of the most difficult and disappointing things, you start seeing the world in a different way. And so when you start seeing the world in a different way, oftentimes something that was very disappointing before is not that disappointing anymore. So one of the things that happens is that because you're able to see the world in a different way with a calm mind, again, just like sleeping, think about like how difficult it is to do stuff when you haven't had a good night's sleep, and then you sleep and you wake up and you're able to do things that you haven't been able to do before. Same thing with the calm mind. And so what ends up happening is as you become more mindful of these emotions, negative emotions arise like this, that you might think of as like a sine wave. If you're paying attention to what's going on, and actually you'll start seeing it in your body first. So think of the body as like a early warning signal. It's like taking an aspirin right when you see the very beginnings of a headache. If you can pay attention right at the very beginning, the emotion won't get as high as it possibly can. What'll happen is you'll, using the common parlance of today, you'll flatten the curve really fast. So it's the same thing. You want to catch these emotions really early when they're starting to arise, rather than waiting until like a headache becomes a migraine headache. Okay, so with that, I'd like to just kind of like, because we only have a few more minutes, I want to just kind of like, say a couple of words about our mental stories. The mental stories that we have, when we focus on a mental story, we consume the details and we block out everything that doesn't fit the narrative. And so one of the things that we do with mindfulness is we just see these mental stories, the ones that keep visiting us over and over again, as just stories. They're just stories. And this is an important part of the practice, so we don't get all consumed in it and then have our world really narrowed down. So let me just talk about next steps. As I've been kind of like saying during this presentation, mindfulness is a skill. And I mean this in the following sense. I used to be a professional musician, in my 20s, and learning guitar is a skill, and so because it's a skill, mindfulness is cultivated with practice. That's the way we do things. We practice, we learn it systematically, like in a class or something, and then we end up practicing it. So the questions that I want to have you think about is, what are you practicing now? And for that, I want you to hear this little kid.
So my question to you today is, what do you practice every day? What do you practice? Because what you practice, you will get good at. What do you practice? Do you practice joy in your life? Do you practice peace in your life? Do you practice happiness in your life? Or do you practice a lot of complaining? Because if you complain, you will get very good at it. And you will get so good at it that you will find fault with everything. Even when there's no fault that a layman cannot see, you, being an expert, will see it.
You'll see it.
What do you practice? Do you practice anger? Because if you practice anger, you will get very good at it. And you will get so good at it that the most trivial you'll think, trivial thing, will make you angry. Like sitting in an airplane and watching the sea across from you somehow looks better than the one you've been given. And that is so unfair of the airlines. What do you practice? Do you practice being worried? Because if you practice being worried, you will get very good at it. And you will get so good at it that everything will worry you, including the buffalo you don't have. So I propose, if this is true that it's a question of practice, then I propose you practice joy.
Okay, so what he's really saying here is that you know, what you're going to do, we're all practicing something. We don't realize that we're practicing things, but one of the things I worry about this whole pandemic is that people are practicing being worried all the time. And then what's going to happen is, just like playing scales on a piano, you get so good at it that later on you're just able to do it without even thinking about it. And people, I'm afraid, are just going to be so good at worrying that they're just going to be worrying all the time, even when this is all over with. And it's all because of the fact that when it said obtain the video to have access to that. Yes, if you want, all you have to do, all you have to do is simply just go online and just look for what do you practice. Just go into YouTube and you're going to find lots of it. It's actually an old, it's a well-known video. So maybe you won't find more joy in your life, but one of the things that's going to happen is you're going to have more contentment and peace. But you might say, I don't have the time. I can't meditate. It's not doing anything. All of these are really great reasons to meditate. As I say, meditation practice is just like going to the mental gym. It strengthens your focus and awareness, builds compassion and resilience, addresses stress and intense emotions. It's even shown to boost productivity. So what was that you were saying about time? So one of the things that I said that I would do, and I'm happy to offer to it, if you go to this URL, let me see if I can copy this. I'm going to offer for anybody who's here kind of a short class, like a 3-week class. And so you get a little bit more of a taste of the practice, because when I do these presentations, you're just getting kind of just a general overview of it. And if you want to try it out, I think they're going to be sending it out as a link to all of you after this presentation, and just give it a try. You know, just give it a try, see what it's like to actually do something like this. So I'm going to see if there's any other questions here, and then what I'll do is and then they say Jamie, thank you for that link. We have access to the recording for this presentation. The people who are doing this have access to it. Okay, and then I just want to turn it back over. Thank you very much to all of you. And again, I wish you the best, and anything that you can do to kind of like help with your mental health is a really good thing.